The first-class cabin smelled like leather, citrus wipes, and quiet entitlement. It was the kind of silence money bought, thick, padded, confident. Conversations were low and controlled. Laptops rested open but untouched. Drinks sweated gently on polished trays. Then a voice cut through it. "Sir, you need to gather your things." It was not loud. It did not need to be. Authority rarely does. Every head turned. The black man stood in the aisle, tall, composed, holding a boarding pass between two fingers as if it were fragile. He wore a dark jacket, fitted, clean, unremarkable in a way that should have made him invisible here. Two security officers stood on either side of him, close enough that their shoulders nearly brushed his arms. A flight attendant faced him, posture rigid, chin lifted, one hand extended toward the front of the plane. "This is first class," she said. "You are being asked to leave. If you think you know where the story goes, stay with me. Like the video, subscribe, and do not look away. Because the reason this plane returned to the gate will force you to question how power really works." The man did not react the way people expected him to. He did not raise his voice. He did not argue. He did not demand a manager. He simply looked at the attendant, then at the security officers, then slowly at the passengers watching him as if he were an unexpected delay rather than a person. "I have a ticket," he said calmly. "Seat 2A. He lifted the boarding pass slightly. The paper shook just enough to show he was human. The attendant did not take it. "We have received a complaint," she said. The words settled into the cabin like dust. A complaint. Not an accusation, not an incident. A feeling, disguised as procedure. "What kind of complaint?" the man asked. She hesitated for a fraction of a second. Not long enough to be noticed by most. Long enough to matter. "Concerns about your presence," she said. A man across the aisle shifted uncomfortably. He had noticed the black man board earlier, had thought nothing of it. Now with uniforms and authority framing the moment, doubt crept in uninvited. The security officer on the man's right gestured forward with two fingers, not touching him, just enough to signal direction. "Sir," the officer said, "let us handle this outside the aircraft." Outside. As if the problem were the space, not the assumption. The black man inhales slowly. Years of experience had taught him which battles were loud and which were lasting. "I will cooperate," he said, "but I would like to know what I am accused of." Silence answered him, because there was nothing to accuse him of. The complaint had come minutes earlier from a woman seated 2 rows back. She had leaned toward the attendant, voice low, eyes darting. She had said she felt uncomfortable, unsafe. She had not said why. She had not needed to. The words did their work on their own. The attendant stepped aside, opening the path toward the front of the plane. "Please," she said, tone final. The exit sign glowed red above the door. The man nodded once, straightened his jacket, and walked. Whispers followed him down the aisle. "Did you see something?" "No, but maybe." They would not remove him for no reason. Better safe than sorry. The lie grew stronger with every unchallenged thought. At the front of the plane, the cockpit door cracked open briefly. A voice murmured. Then it closed again. The man stepped onto the jet bridge. The air was colder there, harder, less forgiving. "Wait here," one of the security officers said. The attendant disappeared back into the cabin. Minutes passed. Inside first class, impatience replaced curiosity. People checked their watches, sighed, complained under their breath about connections and schedules. The man's absence became an inconvenience rather than an injustice. In the cockpit, the pilot scanned the delay notice on his screen. "Why are we still at the gate?" he asked. "Security matter," the co-pilot replied. "Passenger removed from first class." The pilot frowned. "Reason?" "Complaint." The pilot leaned back in his seat. He had heard that word too many times. "Was it verified?" A pause. I will look into it, the co-pilot said. The pilot nodded once. Something about the situation felt wrong in a way experience taught you not to ignore. He opened the passenger manifest, scrolling absently. Names blurred past. Then he stopped, scrolled back, read it again. His expression changed, not dramatically, but decisively. That explains it, he murmured. What? The co-pilot asked. The pilot did not answer. He stood, adjusted his uniform, and opened the cockpit door. The cabin quieted instinctively as he stepped out. Ladies and gentlemen, he said over the intercom, voice steady, we will be returning to the gate briefly. A wave of confusion rippled through the seats. The pilot did not explain. He walked off the plane, down the jet bridge past startled glances, until he reached the black man standing alone, hands clasped, eyes forward. Sir, the pilot said, stopping in front of him, I need to speak with you. The man turned, meeting his gaze calmly. Yes? My name is Captain Reynolds, the pilot said, and I owe you an apology. The security officer stiffened. For what? The man asked. For what happened on my aircraft, the pilot replied, and for what almost did not happen because of it. The man studied him. I was told there was a complaint. Yes, the pilot said, and I should have been told more. He gestured back toward the plane. Please come with me. The security officers hesitated. Captain, one of them said, we were instructed. I am instructing you now, the pilot said, voice firm. He is returning to his seat. They stepped aside. When the man re-entered the cabin, the silence was no longer polite. It was stunned. The attendant froze mid-step. Passengers stared openly now. The pilot walked past the attendant without slowing and turned to face the cabin. This passenger was removed without cause, he said. A collective inhale swept the room. And I do not fly planes where dignity is optional. The words hit harder than any raised voice could have. The man returned to seat 2A slowly, deliberately, as if reclaiming more than space. The pilot waited until he was seated. There was a complaint, the pilot continued. There was no evidence. There was fear. He paused. And fear is not a reason. A woman 2 rows back felt her face burn. The pilot's eyes found her. Ma'am, he said, would you like to explain your concern? She stiffened. I felt unsafe. What did he do? The pilot asked. She searched for an answer. He was watching me. We were facing the same direction, the man said quietly. The pilot nodded. Did he speak to you? No. Touch you? No. Threaten you? No answer. The truth had nowhere to hide. He did not look like he belonged here, she said finally. The cabin froze. The pilot nodded once. Thank you, he said. That honesty matters. He turned back to the cabin. This is what bias looks like when it hides behind politeness. He looked at the attendant. Why was he removed? I followed procedure, she whispered. Procedure without judgment becomes harm, the pilot replied. He faced the cabin again. This aircraft returned to the gate because I recognized a name, he said. The man in 2A did not move. Dr. Marcus Hale, the pilot said. Murmurs spread. Aviation compliance auditor, the pilot continued. You evaluate how airlines treat passengers when they think no one important is watching? The attendant's knees nearly buckled. Dr. Hale spoke calmly. I did not announce myself. I never do. The pilot nodded. And today we failed. He turned back to the woman who made the complaint. You may leave this aircraft, he said. Gasps erupted. You cannot do that, she protested. I can, the pilot said. And I am. She gathered her things, hands shaking, and walked past Dr. Hale without looking at him. When she was gone, the pilot addressed the cabin once more. We will complete a full report before departure, he said. This delay is the cost of accountability. He turned and returned to the cockpit. The plane sat at the gate, heavy with reflection. Dr. Hale looked out the window, watching the ground crew move with practiced precision. This was not over. It had only just begun. The aircraft finally pushed back from the gate with a slow, deliberate glide, as if even the plane itself understood that rushing now would feel wrong. Engines rose in pitch. Seatbelts clicked. The sky outside the windows remained unchanged, indifferent to what had just occurred inside the cabin. Dr. Marcus Hale sat quietly in 2A, hands folded, eyes forward. He did not feel victorious. Moments like this never brought that feeling. What he felt instead was a familiar weight, the kind that came from knowing how rare accountability truly was, and how easily this could have gone another way. As the plane climbed, first class returned to motion, but not to comfort. Conversations restarted in fragments. Voices were lower. Laughter sounded forced. People kept glancing toward 2A, then quickly away. Across the aisle, a middle-aged man in an expensive blazer shifted in his seat. He had watched everything unfold without intervening. He told himself he had been shocked, unsure, unqualified. Now those explanations felt thin. "You handled that with a lot of grace," he said suddenly, leaning slightly toward Dr. Hale. Dr. Hale turned his head. "Grace was not the goal," he replied. "Survival was." The man nodded slowly, absorbing that. A flight attendant approached with measured steps, different now. Her movements lacked the crisp certainty they had earlier. She placed a glass of water on Dr. Hale's tray. "On behalf of the crew," she said softly, "I apologize." Dr. Hale met her eyes. "Apologies matter," he said. "What you do next matters more." She nodded, throat tight, and moved on. In the cockpit, Captain Reynolds adjusted his headset and stared at the flight path ahead. His co-pilot watched him carefully. "You know this is going to come back on us," the co-pilot said. "Yes," Reynolds replied. "Reviews, interviews, corporate statements." "I know." "You could have let it go," the co-pilot added. "No one would have blamed you." Reynolds exhaled slowly. "That is exactly the problem." Hours passed. The cabin lights dimmed. The world outside the windows softened into clouds and fading daylight. Dr. Hale opened his laptop but did not turn it on. Instead, he watched the people around him. This, more than any checklist, was how he learned. Not how airlines performed when inspected, but how people behaved when confronted with discomfort. A young woman across the aisle stared at her hands, replaying the moment in her head. She had felt uneasy watching him be removed, but relief had followed quickly. Relief that it was not her problem. That relief now made her uncomfortable. She leaned toward him cautiously. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "You can," Dr. Hale replied. "Did you know it would turn out like that?" she asked. "No," he said. "I hoped it might." She nodded. "I wanted to say something. I just did not." Dr. Hale studied her. "Most people do not," he said. "That is how systems survive." She swallowed. "I am sorry." He nodded once. "Do better next time." That was all. When the plane landed, there was no applause, no celebration, just quiet movement and a collective need to get somewhere else. Dr. Hale waited until the aisle cleared before standing. He moved with the same calm he had boarded with, his presence steady, unhurried. At the terminal, a senior airline executive waited, flanked by two assistants. His smile was polite, strained. "Dr. Hale," the executive said, extending a hand, "we were not informed you were on this flight." "That is intentional," Dr. Hale replied, shaking it briefly. "Of course," the executive said. "We take matters like this very seriously." "I hope so," Dr. Hale said, "because what happened today was not an exception." The executive nodded quickly. "We will conduct a full review, additional training, updated protocols." Dr. Hale stopped walking. The executive nearly collided with him. "Training is what you do when you believe ignorance is the problem," Dr. Hale said. "What happened today was not ignorance. It was assumption." The executive's smile faded. "You will receive my report," Dr. Hale continued. "But understand this. What matters is not what you write back. It is what you change when no one is watching." The executive nodded, subdued now. "Understood." Dr. Hale turned and walked away, disappearing into the flow of travelers. Outside, the city breathed. People hurried past with luggage, headphones, distractions. Somewhere another complaint would be made. Somewhere else another person would be asked to justify their presence. Dr. Hale stepped into the sunlight and paused for a moment. He knew the story would travel faster than the plane had. Some would deny it, some would defend it, some would weaponize it, but a few would learn from it. And that was enough. The airline's headquarters was quieter than the plane had been. Glass walls, neutral colors, framed statements about values and commitment lining the corridors like promises frozen in time. Dr. Marcus Hale sat alone in a conference room overlooking the runway. Planes lifted and landed in perfect choreography, each one a reminder of systems that functioned flawlessly until people entered them. A legal representative entered first, then a compliance officer, then a regional director. Chairs filled, notepads opened, bottles of water were placed carefully, untouched. "Thank you for meeting with us on such short notice," the regional director began. Dr. Hale nodded. "Time was already lost yesterday." The director flinched slightly. "We want to understand exactly what went wrong," the compliance officer said. Dr. Hale folded his hands. "You already know what went wrong," he replied. "You just need to decide whether you are willing to name it." Silence followed. The legal representative cleared her throat. "We acknowledge that a passenger was removed without evidence." "That is the outcome," Dr. Hale said. "Not the cause." The compliance officer shifted. "Bias," he said cautiously. Dr. Hale nodded. "Unchecked bias supported by procedure. That is the most dangerous kind." The regional director leaned forward. "We have anti-discrimination training, regular refreshers." "Training does not erase instinct," Dr. Hale said. "It reveals whether people are willing to question it." The room grew still. "What would you recommend?" the director asked. Dr. Hale looked through the glass wall at a plane taxiing below. "First," he said, "stop pretending complaints are neutral. A feeling is not evidence. Treat it as such." Penn scribbled. "Second," he continued, "give your crew authority to slow down instead of escalate. Removing someone should be the last option, not the safest one." More notes. "And third," he said, turning back to them, "create consequences that do not disappear after a press release." The legal representative hesitated. "That could expose us." Dr. Hale met her gaze. "So does injustice." The meeting lasted 2 hours. When it ended, nothing felt resolved. That was the truth of real change. It rarely felt satisfying in the moment. As Dr. Hale left the building, his phone buzzed. A message from Captain Reynolds. "They want to interview me." "I expected that," Dr. Hale replied. "You did the right thing." There was a pause. Then another message. "I keep thinking about what would have happened if I had not checked the manifest." Dr. Hale stopped walking. "Then the plane would have taken off," he typed, "and the story would have ended differently." Captain Reynolds did not respond right away. When he did, it was short. "I will not forget that." Neither would Dr. Hale. Weeks passed. The incident circulated online in fragments. A passenger's shaky video, a leaked internal memo, headlines that softened language and sharpened outrage in equal measure. Opinions split neatly along predictable lines. Some called the pilot a hero. Others called him reckless. Some insisted race had nothing to do with it. Others said it was the only thing that mattered. Dr. Hale read none of it. He was too busy. Another flight, another airline, another quiet observation. Patterns emerged quickly once you knew how to look. The same assumptions, the same escalation, the same silence. But something else began to change too. A crew member paused before acting. A supervisor asked for clarification. A complaint was questioned instead of obeyed. Small shifts, fragile ones, but real. One afternoon, Dr. Hale received an email forwarded from a junior flight attendant. "I saw the video. I recognized myself in the silence. I will not be silent again." He closed the laptop and sat back. That was the work. Months later, Dr. Hale boarded another plane. Different airline, different city, same seat class. As he settled into his seat, a woman across the aisle smiled politely. "Busy day?" she asked. "Always," he replied. A moment passed. "I saw something once," she said quietly. "A man was asked to leave a flight for no clear reason. I did nothing. I think about it a lot." Dr. Hale nodded. "What you do with that memory matters more than the moment itself." She exhaled slowly, as if releasing something she had carried longer than she realized. When the flight took off, nothing happened. And that too mattered, because the absence of injustice should not feel remarkable. But until it stops being remarkable, stories like this must be told. The conference rooms and interviews faded behind Dr. Marcus Hale, but the weight of the moment stayed with him. That was the part people never understood. Accountability did not end when the meeting adjourned or the headlines moved on. It lived in the quiet decisions afterward, the ones no camera ever caught. On a rainy Tuesday morning, he sat in a small cafe near an airport he had never audited before. Planes roared overhead every few minutes, their shadows sweeping across the windows like reminders of where he was headed next. He watched travelers come and go, dragging carry-ons, clutching coffee cups, arguing softly on phones. Every face carried a story. Every system they moved through had the power to either respect or diminish them. His phone buzzed again. Another message from Captain Reynolds. "They put me on administrative leave. Paid, but still." Dr. Hale stared at the words for a long moment before replying. "That is how institutions buy time," he typed, "not truth." A few seconds later, a response came. "I would do it again." Dr. Hale allowed himself a brief smile. Small victories mattered. At the next airport, he boarded quietly, no different from any other passenger. He chose an aisle seat this time, not first class. Not because he was afraid, but because observation worked best when expectations were lower. A man across the aisle argued with a gate agent over a bag. A woman nearby rolled her eyes. The interaction resolved without escalation. No uniforms, no raised voices, just a conversation. Dr. Hale took note. Progress did not always announce itself. Midway through boarding, a young black teenager stepped onto the plane with a backpack slung over one shoulder. He hesitated, checking seat numbers twice, anxiety written across his face. A flight attendant watched him closely. Dr. Hale's chest tightened. The teenager reached his row and stopped. Wrong seat. He apologized quickly, voice nervous, and moved on. Nothing happened. No complaint. No gesture. No security. Dr. Hale released a breath he had not realized he was holding. The plane took off. Later, as drinks were served, the flight attendant approached the teenager with a smile, asking if he wanted water or juice. Ordinary kindness. The kind that should never feel extraordinary. Dr. Hale closed his eyes briefly. This, too, was data. After landing, he walked through the terminal, blending into the crowd. His phone buzzed again. A notification from an internal industry forum he rarely checked. Subject line: New interim protocols on passenger complaints. He opened it. The memo was cautious, corporate, filled with words like review and assessment. But buried in the middle was something new. All complaints involving removal must now be corroborated by observable behavior. Discomfort alone is not sufficient cause. Dr. Hale leaned against a pillar and read it twice. It was not justice, but it was movement. Weeks later, he found himself invited to speak at a closed-door aviation safety conference. No press, no live streams, just industry leaders and regulators seated in neat rows, pens ready, expressions guarded. He did not show video clips. He did not dramatize the story. He simply told it. A man removed, a complaint unexamined, a pilot who paused. Then he asked a question. How many of you would have let that plane take off? The silence that followed was answer enough. Afterward, a senior executive approached him privately. "We are worried about backlash," the executive admitted, "about passengers feeling their concerns will be dismissed." Dr. Hale nodded. And I am worried about passengers who have learned their presence is the problem. The executive had no reply. On his way out, Dr. Hale passed a wall of framed mission statements. One phrase stood out: safety without compromise. He stopped and looked at it. Safety, he said quietly to no one in particular, is not the absence of conflict. It is the presence of fairness. That evening he returned home. The city lights blurred past the car window. His apartment was quiet, exactly the way he liked it after days like these. He set his bag down and sat at his desk, opening a blank document. Not a report, not an audit, a letter. He wrote to himself, as he often did after moments that shifted something inside him. Today reminded me that change does not come from being right. It comes from being present when it would be easier not to be. He closed the laptop. Somewhere another plane was boarding. Another complaint would be whispered. Another decision would be made in seconds that could shape a lifetime. Dr. Hale could not be everywhere. But he did not need to be. Because the real question was no longer whether injustice existed. It was whether people would continue pretending they did not see it. And slowly, unevenly, uncomfortably, the answer was beginning to change. If you stayed until the end of this story, do not let it stop here. Share it, talk about it, and subscribe for more stories that challenge quiet injustice and remind us that dignity should never depend on who is watching.